The skies above Earth burned the day the Celestine Empire declared war. Massive battle cruisers, curving, swan-like vessels of alloy and plasma conduits, hovered in near orbit, shining like false angels before dawn. When they struck, they targeted the major population centers first, broadcasting a single demand across all frequencies. Humanity must submit. Human forces scrambled to retaliate, fighter jets soared, railgun cannons roared, and desperate comlinks spat out frantic orders. Civilization had never anticipated a full-scale extraterrestrial assault. Sure, the governments had dabbled in militarizing orbital stations, but nobody believed Earth possessed the technology to stave off an empire that spanned half the galaxy. The Celestine ships cut through the planet's meager orbital defenses with a precision that bordered on cruel. Entire battalions on the ground found themselves pinned under energy shields. Major capitals lost power in minutes. Billions of people witnessed the downfall of human pride in real time. Some said the Celestine resembled Earth's mythical angels, slender, luminous beings with elliptical eyes and shimmering wings formed of nanoweave. That was no comfort. They came with an offer that was more like a condemnation. Become a client race, labor under their directives, and Earth population would be permitted to survive. Resist and pity was not in their dictionary. They had already annexed dozens of planets across the galactic spiral. Most gave in without a fight, but humans are not famous for easy compliance, especially not in the face of threats. That day, scattered pockets of Earth's defenders did the unthinkable. Over the airwaves came the voice of a young officer. "We will not yield. We are the children of a death world. They think they know war. They know nothing. Humanity, stand." The Celestine, not used to hearing such defiance from a primitive species, decided to make an example of Earth. Like so many times in its violent history, humanity resolved to do the impossible. Fight back! Thus began the conflict that would spread from the Terran system across the entire galaxy, sparking an age of war, revolution, and a new era for humankind. Brilliant arcs of plasma hammered the surface near the old city of Bordeaux. Lieutenant Commander Zia Rain sprinted between chunks of broken concrete, rifle clutched to her chest. She had never imagined war of such magnitude. Just weeks earlier, she was a pilot for Earth's fledgling orbital forces, logging flight hours, testing prototypes. Now, with orbital command in ruins, she led a ragtag squad of ground soldiers in a last stand for her homeworld. "Jenkins, on your left!" she barked. Through the swirling dust, a Celestine shock trooper advanced, its elliptical wings flickering with defensive light. Jenkins, barely out of basic training, panicked and nearly dropped his weapon, but humanity is known for its capacity to adapt. Jenkins bit down on terror, squeezed the trigger of his coiled rifle, and watched the Celestine reel backward under the kinetic slugs. Zia's earpiece crackled. "Lieutenant Commander, we have evac shuttles ready. The city's lost, ma'am. We can't hold." Major Del Vecchio's voice betrayed a deep weariness. Every city around the globe seemed to be lost now, or close to it. Still, they fought. Volunteer militias, special forces, local police, people hid in the remains of cathedrals and skyscrapers forging alliances to protect what families and neighborhoods remained. Others looked skyward, scanning for that shimmering silhouette of Celestine warships. The entire population had learned to fear the hum of alien engines. "Copy that," Zhao replied, voice steadier than she felt. "Get as many civilians out as you can. We'll hold the line till you're gone." She glanced over her battered squad, 13 men and women, tired, hungry, low on ammunition. Jenkins trembled as he reloaded. Sergeant Kelly's face was set in a stony mask of determination. A handful of drones, half of them damaged, hovered overhead, scanning. She knew how slim their odds were, but humans had a knack for forging hope from hopelessness. "Set demolitions on the corridor behind us," she ordered. "We'll funnel them to that plaza, then flatten them with everything we've got." Her people nodded. Nobody asked if they'd survive. That was not the point anymore. The point was to resist, to buy time, to prove that Earth would not go gentle into the dark. As the next wave of Celestine troopers appeared, shining in the dusty gloom, Zaya lifted her rifle. "We are humans," she thought grimly, "and we don't break without a fight." High above on the battered orbital station Ascension 4, Captain Dominic Hayes stared out a cracked viewport. Fragments of Celestine wreckage drifted by in slow, macabre spirals. The station had been one of Earth's proudest achievements, symbolizing humankind's first permanent foothold among the stars. Now it lay half-ruined, with half its modules depressurized. Only the station's rotating habitat ring still functioned, barely. Hayes rubbed a grime-smeared hand over his face. Most of his command staff had died in the initial assault. He was down to a skeleton crew, scientists, medical personnel, a few station security troopers. The Celestine had pulled back from Ascension 4, presumably because it was no longer a threat. The station had sustained heavy damage, and no one believed it could muster any real offense. Yet in that neglect lay an opportunity. He turned from the viewport to address the survivors, who gathered around a floating makeshift console in the half-gravity environment. "We may not have battleships or an army," Hayes said, voice echoing in the cramped space, "but we have intel. We've intercepted Celestine transmissions. Their empire is bigger than we ever imagined, but they still have gaps in their sensor coverage, choke points, and supply lines. If Earth is to mount any resistance, we need to exploit those weaknesses." An older astrophysicist named Dr. Helene Baudreau glanced at the battered star charts. "We do have the experimental FTL system in Dock C," she offered. "It was never tested, but if we could fix it, maybe launch a ship to find allies or lost human colonies, God knows if there's anything out there that might help us." Captain Hayes stared at the space station diagram flickering on a cracked screen. The prototype ship, HSS Endeavour, was a testament to human ingenuity, but was considered too risky for any official mission. Rumors said it could cross interstellar distances in days rather than months. If it worked. If it didn't, well, no one would come to rescue them. "All right," Hayes said finally, drawing a shaky breath. "We'll do it. Let's gather every engineer we have left. We've got to repair that ship and go searching. If Earth stands alone against the Celestine, we lose. We need to find something, anything out there. Another civilization maybe, or at least some advanced technology." A hush followed. Then each survivor nodded, bracing themselves for the monumental task. They were the last flicker of Earth's spacefaring dream. The Celestine believed Earth was all but conquered. But one station, half-broken yet defiant, would try to define an empire, and humanity had always thrived when cornered. As they floated away to begin repairs, Captain Hayes felt a renewed spark in his chest. "They think we're beaten," he thought, "but they have no idea what humans can achieve when everything is at stake." Far from the front lines, in a heavily guarded Celestine facility, Specialist Zoya Lund awoke with a headache. She found herself lying on a cold, translucent floor, faintly illuminated by a crystalline panel in the ceiling. Her wrists and ankles were shackled by shimmering energy bands. Every angle of the curved chamber radiated an alien elegance. A faint, sourceless hum permeated the air. Celestine technology, always so eerily quiet. Zoya's last memory was launching a sabotage run on a Celestine outpost in the Sahara. She had been part of an elite infiltration team planting charges near the base's main power lines. Something must have gone wrong. Her head still rang with the memory of a thunderous blast. Had she been captured? The door slid open, revealing a Celestine officer. Tall, slender, skin-tinted a pale gold, luminous eyes framed by symmetrical markings. The officer's wings folded behind him, glittered faintly. He regarded her with cold curiosity before speaking in near-perfect English, courtesy of neurolingual implants. "You are alone now," the Celestine said, tone almost melodic. "No sense in further resistance. The Empire is generous to those who cooperate." Zoya glared, shuffling on the floor. "Generous? Looks a lot like subjugation from where I'm sitting." The Celestine's expression hardened. "Your species has proven reckless. You speak of freedom, but your refusal to kneel only brings casualties on yourselves. If you yield, Earth will become a protected labor world in the Empire. Humanity will be integrated. Otherwise, your people suffer needlessly." Zoya coughed, tasting blood. "We'd rather suffer than be your slaves." He studied her for a moment as though regarding a wild creature that had unexpectedly bitten him. "In every conquest we've undertaken, there have always been a few rebellious individuals," he murmured. "But entire species rarely defy us so stubbornly. Your Terran qualities, obsession with autonomy, readiness to engage in brutal conflict, are more intense than we anticipated." Zoya's lips twisted in a defiant half-smile. "You have no idea who we are. People have been trying to conquer Earth for thousands of years. Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Hitler, and now apparently you. We've got a lot of practice pushing back. She winced, inhaling sharply at the pain in her ribs. And we adapt. Rather than answer, the Celestine officer turned to go. I hope for your sake you change your stance. We will speak again. He left with an eerie grace, the door whispering shut behind him. Zoya closed her eyes, letting the anger coil in her chest. They think we'll submit if they press hard enough? She forced herself to smile, ignoring the throbbing in her body. They don't know humans at all. The moment she found the slightest chance, she would prove how dangerous a single determined Terran could be. On the battered station Ascension 4, the skeleton crew labored around the clock, making do with salvaged parts and barely adequate tools. The HSS Endeavour was a marvel of Terran engineering, with its experimental fold drive that theoretically created microtunnels in space-time. Yet, it was riddled with broken circuits from the station's bombardment. Captain Hayes walked among the bustle, offering encouragement. Even in the cramped corridors, one could sense a stirring optimism. We still have a future, the crew seemed to say through their efforts. Days later, the newly patched Endeavour launched from a battered docking clamp. Dr. Boudreaux was assigned as Chief Science Officer, assisting the flight crew in monitoring the fold drive. Most of the station's meager fuel reserves had been funneled into this one desperate mission. Fold drive spool initiated, came the pilot's tense voice. Coordinates locked on a charted star system rumored to be unclaimed. Captain, we might rip ourselves apart or end up flung halfway across the galaxy. Either way, it beats surrender, Hayes said from the command console. Engage. A moment later, reality twisted. The stars outside the viewport stretched into brilliant lines as the fold drive tore open a microfissure. Then, in a rush, the ship vanished from Earth's orbit. Ascension 4 was left behind, quietly rotating, its crew praying that the vessel would survive and return with something that could save their home. The Endeavour emerged from fold space near a star ringed by debris fields and gas swirls. Electrical arcs flickered along the ship's hull as the battered drive powered down. Drive's offline, the pilot announced, relief mixing with awe. But we're alive, and that's a stable star out there, Captain. Hayes exhaled, scanning the sensor readouts. Let's see what we've got. Any signs of Celestine presence? None, Dr. Boudreaux replied. But I'm picking up structure readings on a nearby asteroid belt, possibly artificial, could be old mining facilities or a hidden base. Hope stirred in Hayes's gut. If it's a base, it might belong to someone else. Let's investigate. We need allies. If not, at least we might scavenge some resources to fix the Endeavour. As they navigated deeper, the sensors became clearer. Sure enough, something resembling station modules and sealed habitats clung to the largest asteroid. Scorch marks marred the surfaces, suggesting a past battle. When the Endeavour approached hailing distance, a weak signal flickered through the static. Unidentified vessel, if you are Celestine, your threats mean nothing. We are the Escher Freedoms. We do not yield. Hayes' chest tightened. Another race resisting the Celestine? They're not Celestine, Dr. Boudreaux murmured, scanning. This might be exactly what we need. Hayes opened the comm, carefully sending an old Earth-based greeting protocol, then the Terran standard message. We are humans from Earth. Our planet is under attack by the Celestine Empire. We seek peaceful contact and potential alliance. Silence, then a crackling reply. Human, another species that fights the Empire? This is unexpected. Dock if you wish, but come unarmed. Captain Hayes allowed a faint smile. They're letting us in. Earth's entire future might hinge on these next moments. They docked at a battered airlock. The interior was rudimentary, scarred corridors of welded metal, flickering lights. The Asar themselves looked somewhat reptilian, with thick, scaly hides and large, reflective eyes. They wore simple harnesses decorated with clan symbols. Their leader, a broad-shouldered Asar named Herrick, greeted Hayes with guarded curiosity. You say you fight the Celestine, Harak hissed, voice echoing in the metal corridor. They nearly exterminated us years ago. We were forced to flee our homeworld. Now we scavenge, sabotage their supply lines when we can. We lost so many. We didn't know others stood against them. Hayes nodded gravely. We have nowhere else to run, so we fight. Our planet is under siege, but we have found ways to hurt them. Small ways. We're here hoping to find allies, maybe share intel technology, coordinate strikes. Harak glanced at his kin, who blinked uncertainly. We are not powerful, but we are stubborn. If humans truly stand with us, we might help each other. The Empire keeps a command outpost in this sector. Perhaps we can plan a joint raid, gather more support from other scattered survivors. That was all Hayes needed to hear. The battered Endeavor, forged from desperate hope, might have found the seeds of a new alliance. If scattered resistance groups across the galaxy united, the Celestine might discover the price of underestimating humanity and everyone else who refused to bow. Back on the ravaged surface of Earth, Xia Rain's small band had managed to escape Bordeaux with a handful of civilians. They made their way north, searching for any organized military presence. They found scattered enclaves of survivors rallying under a single banner, the Terran Defense Initiative. Operating from hidden bunkers once belonging to old nuclear facilities, TDI was a patchwork of global forces who refused to surrender. Inside a subterranean command center near the ruins of Berlin, Rain stepped into a stifling war room crammed with monitors, worn-out soldiers, and half-sparking computers. Lines of stress etched every face. Yet amid the gloom, an undercurrent of determination pulsed. General Rafiq al-Hassan, one of the ranking TDI officers, greeted her. "Lieutenant Commander Rains, your actions in Bordeaux are known. You bought civilians precious time. Good work." Zaya saluted, exhaustion clear in her posture. "Sir, we're losing ground. The Celestine have blocked all major roads, turned entire cities into their bases. But we discovered something. They rely heavily on advanced atmospheric stabilizers to breathe comfortably in our environment. If we sabotage those stabilizers, we can hamper their operations." The general's eyes lit with grim interest. "That's valuable intel. We've also gleaned that the Empire is setting up more permanent infrastructure. Like they plan to stay indefinitely? We have to strike now, from the shadows. Hit their supply lines, sabotage their technology, make Earth too costly for them." A hush followed, broken only by the hum of the overhead generator. A sense of unity took hold as men and women in ragtag uniforms nodded in unison. No single government led them anymore. They were simply humans, banding together under TDI. Old national rivalries evaporated under the threat of extinction. "Then let's do this," Zia said quietly. "We can't match them in open battle, not yet. But we can make sure they bleed for every inch." Under TDI's covert plans, squads spread out across Europe and beyond, planning charges, hijacking Celestine patrols, and feeding intelligence back to command. What they lacked in high-tech weaponry, they made up for with cunning and reckless courage. More than once, Celestine troopers were startled to find humans ambushing them at night, using jury-rigged drones and improvised artillery. Rumors spread among alien ranks. The Terrans didn't fear death. They fought with a savage determination like cornered beasts, refusing to surrender. In a darkened corner of TDI's war room, an older sergeant turned to Jaya. "We hear the Empire calls Earth a cursed place. Death world, they say. Good, let them fear the name." Jaya simply nodded. She thought of everyone she'd lost. If fear was the only weapon they had, they would wield it fiercely. Soon, however, she would find that Earth wasn't fighting alone. Deep within the Celestine holding facility, Zoya Lund planned her escape. They rarely let her out of the cell except for interrogation or forced medical scans, but she'd glean enough data from the glimpses to plot a route. Over the days, or perhaps weeks, she feigned compliance whenever the Celestine Guard demanded it, carefully memorizing security protocols and scheduling. She noticed that a certain alien caretaker brought her nutrient gels at a precise time each cycle. The caretaker used an access panel that flickered green for 3 seconds before shutting. Zoya's moment came when the caretaker foolishly leaned too close. She sprang forward, ignoring the jolt of pain in her cracked ribs, and jammed a makeshift shiv of broken plating into the caretaker's wing joint. The alien shrieked, dropping the tray. In the confusion, Zoya lunged for the open door. A siren blared, and her pulse thundered as she sprinted into the corridor. She knew the layout was labyrinthine. Alarms would bring troopers soon, but she was counting on the Celestine's arrogance. They rarely expected solitary humans to pull off a real escape. She found a small guard post, empty for the moment, and rifled through stored equipment. Most was designed for Celestine physiology, but she managed to salvage a sidearm that recognized only partial bioauthorizations. The pistol whined uncertainly in her hand, but it powered up. "Better than nothing," she muttered. Time was short. She ran down corridor after corridor, guided by the facility's schematic she had reconstructed in her mind. A group of Celestine troopers spotted her, wings flaring with luminescent aggression, but she was too fast and triggered an auxiliary blast door behind her. Soon, she found a shuttle hangar, small but functional. The bay thrummed with energy barriers that opened to the outside sky, now or never. Two Celestine guards rushed to block her. They fired a volley of shimmering darts that grazed her shoulder, searing with painful burns. She bit back a scream and fired her stolen pistol, its recoil strange in her grip. One guard collapsed, the other scrambled for cover. That was all the opening Zoya needed. She sprinted up the ramp of a sleek Celestine shuttle. The cockpit was alien, but still a console with thruster toggles. She jammed her fist against the runic start sequence. A mechanical hum responded. She exhaled. As the bay doors opened, energy blasts scarred the shuttle's flank, but in a burst of thrust, Zoya soared free, leaving the facility behind. Her breath came in ragged pants. She had done the impossible, escaped a Celestine prison, alone. She set coordinates for the TDI stronghold, rumored to be near Berlin, hoping her battered craft would make it before Celestine interceptors found her. Never underestimate a human with nothing to lose, she thought, lips curved in a fierce grin. In that far-flung asteroid belt, Captain Hayes and the Eshar leader Harak finalized plans to raid a nearby Celestine command outpost. Word had spread among scattered enclaves of other refugee species, a handful of starfarers, each with grudges against the Celestine. Some were avian like Tarshti, who lost their world to Celestine expansion. Others were exiled Celestine hybrids, rebels who despised the Empire. Gradually, in hidden corners of the galaxy, a new coalition was forming. Hayes marveled at the ragtag fleet that assembled near the Eshar asteroid. It counted less than 20 ships, many of them old cargo haulers or stolen Celestine scouts, but each represented a spark of defiance. If the Celestine had 1,000 warships, then these few would become saboteurs and pirates. They would wage a different style of war, hit and run, gather intelligence, free prisoners, sow chaos. And perhaps one day they would arrive at Earth's doorstep to turn the tide. Remember, Harak growled to the group, our objective is the Celestine supply node in the Velis system. We blow up their comm arrays, disrupt their shipping route, gather any data on troop deployments, and vanish. Swift, precise. Hayes nodded. Our hope is also to find intel on Earth's situation. We need to know if there's a chance to break the blockade. The Allied captains murmured agreement. Many had not even heard of Earth until now, yet they recognized the significance, a proud species resisting the Empire. For them, humankind's stand was a symbol of what they themselves dreamed of accomplishing. When the small fleet made its jump to Velis, they found the Celestine outpost lightly guarded. Clearly, the Empire did not anticipate a concerted strike here. The rebels moved in, unleashing a barrage of scavenged missiles and hacking viruses. The Celestine garrison scrambled to respond, but their lines of communication were jammed. Hayes, piloting the Endeavor personally, led a boarding team onto the station. They fought side by side with Isar troopers, forcibly opening locked doors and freeing alien prisoners who had languished for years. Alarms blared, and the swirl of battles raged across the corridors. A Tarshti sniper provided covering fire from a catwalk as Hayes and Herrick planted explosives in a crucial power relay. Soon a deafening boom rocked the station. Systems flickered, and the Celestine commander's furious shouts echoed over the intercom. Everyone back to the ships, Harak roared, wings flaring in triumphant ferocity. They retrieved valuable intel from a data core, then retreated to the docks. Bursting away from the station in a hail of gunfire, they left behind swirling debris and Celestine confusion. The entire strike took less than half an hour. Precise, devastating, unstoppable. We got the data, Hayes said breathlessly when they regrouped in open space. The Allied ships hammered their jump drives and vanished before Celestine reinforcements arrived. Back in the safety of the asteroid base, the rebels pored over the stolen data. To Hayes' shock, it included details about Earth's occupation. The Celestine had stationed one of their dreadnoughts, Eminence of Dawn, as the blockade's flagship. Meanwhile, entire swaths of the planet remained in open revolt. A flicker of fierce pride burned through him. Earth was still fighting, and in the corners of that data was something else. A hidden reference to a Celestine superweapon under development. If the Empire completed it, any hope of dethroning them might be lost. Hayes' voice shook slightly. We have to get this intel home. Earth needs to know. Then maybe, with your help, we can punch a hole in that blockade. Humanity won't stand alone anymore. We stand together, all of us. A hush fell as the Eshar, Tarshti, and other species considered the enormity of that statement. At length, Harak placed a clawed hand on Hayes' shoulder. We see you, Captain. Humans refuse to yield. You inspired us. We will help. Let's bring this empire to its knees. A month later, Earth's skies once again filled with Celestine warships, but this time there was an unexpected complication for the Empire. TDI's sabotage teams had methodically destroyed or damaged half of the Empire's atmospheric stabilizers. The blockade's ground forces found themselves struggling to breathe Earth's heavier, pollutant-laden air. Meanwhile, the rebels from beyond the stars prepared a coordinated strike. The blockade might be powerful, but it was stretched thin, maintaining dominion over an entire planet. High above Earth, Captain Hayes returned aboard the Endeavour, accompanied by the Eshar flagship Tarshti interceptors and a handful of allied vessels. It was a meager fleet, but each ship brimmed with determination. The plan was twofold: distract and engage the Celestine blockade fleet while TDI forces on the ground rose up in a final surge, a multi-front assault that the Celestine hopefully wouldn't anticipate. They jumped into Earth's orbit in a blaze of engine flares. Immediately, the Empire's dreadnought Eminence of Dawn opened fire. Energy beams lanced the vacuum, forcing the Allied ships to scatter, but the rebels had done their homework. Tarshti fighters wove dizzying spirals around Celestine turrets, while Eshar boarding pods slammed into smaller enemy craft. The Endeavour itself unleashed a volley of missiles loaded with Terran cluster munitions. Inelegant, yet brutally effective. On the surface, TDI cells emerged from hidden bunkers to storm Celestine strongpoints. Civilians joined the fight, hurling improvised grenades at troop convoys. Over in Berlin's remains, Zia Raines led her squad through the smoky streets. They hacked an alien communications tower, rerouting Celestine transmissions to sow confusion in the ranks. Zoya Lun, who had arrived days prior with vital intelligence, coordinated sabotage of the occupying forces' power grids, plunging entire areas into darkness. Across the planet, beacons flared with the same message: strike now, liberate Earth. The Celestine, accustomed to near-instant compliance from subjugated worlds, found themselves beset on all sides. They fought fiercely, unleashing advanced weapons that scorched forests and toppled entire districts. Millions perished in the chaos, but for every fallen human, 10 more rose up, seizing alien rifles and fighting on raw nerve and fury. In orbit, the tide began to shift when the dreadnought shield generator took a direct hit from an Eshar boarding team that sacrificed half their number to plant explosives inside. A massive explosion engulfed the ship's flank, causing it to list. The Endeavour seized the opening, launching a concentrated barrage into the dreadnought's engines. In a final blaze of destruction, the Celestine flagship went down, consumed by white-hot flames. And with it died the Empire's main orbital command center. On Earth, entire Celestine garrisons found themselves cut off from support. Some retreated into hidden fortresses, others attempted to flee. The Terran Defense Initiative continued to harry them at every turn. Zia Raines, battered and exhausted, witnessed the silhouettes of Allied ships streaking across the sky. She sank to her knees on the rubble of a ruined street, tears mingling with ash. The fight was far from over. Pockets of Celestine resistance would remain, but for the first time, the Empire's absolute grip on Earth had shattered. She pressed a hand to her earpiece, hearing Captain Hayes' voice crackling with fatigue but also relief. Earth is free. At least the blockade is broken. We'll land to assist. The job's not done, but we have a chance now. A roar of triumph erupted from TDI squads across the planet. Civilians cheered. Even the skies seemed to ring with human defiance. The Celestine had come with illusions of easy conquest, only to discover a death world that refused to bow. Now Earth had allies among the stars, and the name human would never again be taken lightly in the galaxy. In the months that followed, the Celestine Empire found itself at a crossroads. Much of its leadership refused to believe a primitive species and a ragtag alliance could truly threaten their supremacy. But reality was undeniable. Supply lines had been compromised, outposts destroyed, entire fleets forced to fall back. Meanwhile, scattered worlds emboldened by humanity's example rose in revolt. The once invincible empire faced the greatest challenge in its history. On Earth, ruins still smoldered. Millions mourned the dead and faced an uncertain future, yet they had proven the impossible was possible. TDI forces gradually transitioned into a global rebuilding effort, forging partnerships with the newly arrived alien allies. For the first time, humanity recognized its potential place among the stars. Not as a subordinate species, but as an equal or even a leader. The Ashar, Tarshi, and other free peoples established an interstellar council, a shaky coalition that planned to stand against any resurgence from the Celestine. In a massive hangar that served as a makeshift capital on Earth, Captain Dominic Hayes, Lieutenant Commander Zia Rains, Specialist Zoya Lund, and Harak of the Ashar met to discuss the next steps. Their conversation was a tapestry of languages and accents, all woven together by the same resolve. Never again would a species stand alone in the face of tyranny. Zoya still nursed injuries but stood proudly, her voice strong. We owe a lot to each other. Without the TDI, Earth would have fallen. Without our off-world allies, we'd never have broken the blockade. The Celestine will regroup, though. We need to be ready. Harak nodded, the scales around his eyes tightening. We shall remain vigilant. The Celestine are cunning. But now, they face not a single rebellious world, but many. Their illusions of invulnerability have shattered. Gia looked around at the battered but determined faces. She thought of the first day the Celestine ships appeared over Earth. The fear, the shock, the heartbreak of losing entire cities. And yet humanity had discovered new strength, forging alliances under the darkest circumstances. We used to fight each other, she mused. But standing together, we proved unstoppable. Captain Hayes regarded them all, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Our next task is bigger than any one planet. We have to unify these broken worlds, rebuild fleets, prepare to defend them, and in time we take the war back to the Celestine's core systems if they insist on continuing this tyranny. The galaxy deserves liberation. He paused, thinking of all that had been lost, all that could still be lost. Then, raising his hand to the battered Terran and Eshar banners above, he concluded, They call Earth a death world. Maybe it is, but we're survivors, and we'll show the galaxy what that really means. A quiet hush, then applause, rumbles of agreement. Beyond the hangar doors, a fiery sunset lit the sky, coloring the horizon in streaks of orange and gold, like a promise of rebirth. As Earth and its new allies prepared for the next chapter, the Celestine Empire's time of uncontested rule slipped away. Across star systems and hidden outposts, voices whispered one phrase with equal parts awe and fear. Humanity fought back. And they were far from finished.